a birthday, a fight with someone you loved, the first time you saw a place that actually mattered to you. Hold it in your mind for a moment. Feel how solid it is, how real. Every time you have recalled it, your brain has quietly rewritten it. The version you are holding right now is basically a copy of a copy of a copy, and each generation of that copy drifted a little further from what actually happened. And the stronger the memory feels, the more you have recalled it, and the more it has changed. This is exactly how memory is supposed to work. Science proved it. You have to go back to a lab in the early 1970s and meet a psychologist named Elizabeth Loftus. Loftus was 26 years old when she began asking a question the entire field of psychology had essentially ignored. She wanted to know if the assumption that many of the psychologists made, that memory worked like a camera, was actually true, where you experienced something, the brain recorded it, and the recording sat there waiting to be replayed. Her first experiments were simple. She showed participants footage of a car accident, then asked them questions about what they had seen. She embedded something subtle into the questions. Some participants were asked how fast the cars were going when they smashed into each other. Others were asked how fast the cars were going when they contacted each other. The participants who heard smashed reported significantly higher speeds than those who heard contacted. They also reported seeing broken glass at the scene in which there was no broken glass at the scene. The question asked afterward had edited the memory. Loftus called this the misinformation effect, and it was only the beginning of her discoveries. The deeper question was not whether memories could be distorted by new information. It was whether entirely false memories could be created from nothing at all. In the early 1990s, Loftus ran what became one of the most famous experiments in the history of psychology. She recruited volunteers and told them she had collected childhood stories from their families. She presented each participant with 4 memories from their past. 3 were real, supplied by the family. 1 was fabricated. The invented memory was always the same. As a child, around the age of 5, you got lost in a shopping mall. You were frightened and crying. An elderly stranger helped you until your family found you. 25% of participants not only accepted the false memory, they described the stranger's face. They remembered what they were wearing. They remembered how scared they felt. When Loftus debriefed them and explained one of the 4 memories had been invented, many argued with her even after being showed evidence. The memory felt exactly like the real ones, because to the brain, it was. Your brain does not store memories the way a computer stores files. Memory is reconstruction, not retrieval. Every single time you remember something, your brain rebuilds that experience from fragments. But during that reconstruction, the brain fills gaps and updates the memory with information that arrived since the original event. And then it stores that updated version back in place of the original. This is called reconsolidation, and it means that every act of remembering is also an act of rewriting. The science behind this was confirmed definitively in 2000, when researchers at New York University showed that recalling a fear memory physically destabilizes it at the molecular level, triggering a new round of protein synthesis in the brain before the memory can be restored. For a window of several hours after recall, the memory is chemically unstable. Anything that happens during that window gets folded into it. Then it re-solidifies, slightly different from before. The memories you have returned to most often, the ones that feel most vivid and most certain, are the ones that have been rebuilt the most times. The implications of this reach far beyond a psychology lab. A man named Stephen Avery was convicted of sexual assault in New Jersey based largely on eyewitness testimony. The witness was certain. She had looked directly at her attacker and repeated her identification multiple times. She believed completely in what she remembered. Stephen was cleared 11 years later by DNA evidence. He had never been near her. The Innocence Project, which uses DNA evidence to overturn wrongful convictions, has now cleared over 375 people in the United States. In more than 69% of those cases, the conviction rested on eyewitness testimony. But here is where everything takes a turn that almost nobody expects. In 1995, cognitive psychologists Henry Roediger and Kathleen McDermott published a study using what became known as the DRM paradigm. They read participants' lists of words built around a theme. The words tired, dream, pillow, night, dark, snore, rest. Every word pointed toward a central concept that was never spoken: sleep. At the end of the experiment, participants were asked to recall the words they had heard. Almost every participant remembered hearing the unspoken word. Their brains had recognized a pattern, predicted the missing piece, and inserted it into memory as if it had actually occurred. When the stored version no longer fits what you currently know and believe, the brain updates it. The past is continuously revised to serve the present. And this brings us to something even harder to sit with. In 1885, a German psychologist named Hermann Ebbinghaus spent 5 years memorizing thousands of meaningless 3-letter syllables, then testing himself at precise intervals to measure how fast he forgot them. What he found became known as the forgetting curve. Within 20 minutes of learning something new, roughly half of it is gone. By the end of a single day, only about a third remains. After a month, fewer than 1 in 5 details survives. This was how every human brain in his study behaved. For more than a century, scientists treated cited this as evidence that the brain was poorly designed for long-term storage. But more recent research from Trinity College Dublin and the University of Toronto reached a different conclusion entirely. They argued forgetting is a feature of memory. In a world that constantly changes, a brain that held every detail with equal weight would be crippled and unable to distinguish between what is still relevant and what no longer is. Now, what if I told you that sudden good feeling when doing something you love plays a direct role in memory loss? It's funny. Research on fruit flies whose memory systems share structural similarities with ours found a dedicated dopamine circuit whose function is erasure. When researchers blocked this circuit, the flies remembered significantly better, which means under normal conditions, the brain is running a continuous forgetting mechanism in parallel with memory itself. The question your brain is always asking is, what still matters? There is a woman named Jill Price whose brain cannot answer that question. In 2000, Price contacted researchers at the University of California, Irvine, to describe something she had lived with since the age of 14. She could remember every day of her life. What she ate, what was on television, what was said in passing conversations. Researchers spent years testing her, cross-checking her accounts against verifiable records. She was accurate with near-perfect consistency. Pause the video and try to remember everything you talked with your friend on March 13th. I bet you can't. Price described her memory as a movie reel that never stops. She could not escape her own past. Every painful moment, every embarrassing conversation, every loss existed at the same intensity as the day it occurred. She described it as a burden so heavy she did not know how to put it down. In 2006, scientists gave her condition a name: highly superior autobiographical memory. Fewer than 100 people in the world have ever been scientifically diagnosed with HSAM. What Price experienced as a curse, your brain protects you from automatically. The writer Jorge Luis Borges understood this before neuroscience could prove it. In 1942, he published a short story about a fictional man named Funes, who, after a riding accident, acquired the ability to remember everything, literally everything. He could recall a full day in its entirety. But recalling it took a full day. Borges wrote that Funes was almost incapable of general ideas. Because to think generally, to understand that a dog seen at 3 in the afternoon is the same species as a dog seen at 7 in the evening requires forgetting the specific. Neuroscientist Rodrigo Quian Quiroga later found that neurons in the human hippocampus, the brain's internal GPS, respond to abstract concepts precisely by ignoring particular details. Your brain that can recognize patterns, learn from experience, build a model of the world, is a brain that forgets. Another twist happens here. Research by neuroscientist Donna Bridge at Northwestern University found that memory recall actively distorts the original experience in the direction of your current beliefs and feelings. If you now believe a relationship was unhappy, your brain will revise your memories of it to match that belief. If you now see someone as untrustworthy, your recalled memories of them will shift to support that conclusion. The memories your brain has edited most aggressively are the ones that carry the most emotional weight, the ones connected to your sense of who you are.